Hello, fly tyers, and welcome to Fly Tying Monday. Hope you're all doing well today. Got a couple flies for you. I'm actually going to show you 3 ways. I'm only going to tie 2 of them, but the third variation's pretty easy. So just something you might consider for a Griffith gnat. But I'll wait a couple minutes until people start coming in. Let us know if this is your first fly tying session, because we've been doing this, God, since COVID started, and like the week after the kind of the official shutdown started, we started this right away, and we've been doing it ever since. Almost every Monday. Happy Halloween, Ed. Ed, you going trick-or-treating tonight? Todd, you going trick-or-treating? Roger, this is not your first rodeo. Roger, have you missed any of these sessions? I don't believe you have missed a single one. Maureen, welcome. Maureen, it's her first session. Well, welcome, Maureen. We're glad to have you here. Anybody else new that's here today? Last week was Shannon's first. Well, great, Shannon, welcome. I see the numbers going up, so I'm going to wait a little bit more. If you are interested in the pattern description, which is pretty simple, there it is, and you might have to expand it because I did the double Griffith. Oh, there's the double Griffith. So there's the Griffith gnat here, and then the double Griffith, which just adds a strip peacock herl in the middle. So, well, it looks like we have got some pretty good crowd. Oh, it's still bumping up. I'm gonna hang on before I start my official preamble. We'll wait till the numbers stop going up. Looks like it's going to be a busy Monday. Is Orvis handing anything out to us? Oh, for trick or treat, Larry? Yeah, a free catalog. Anybody that wants a free catalog, just call into Orvis. They'll send you a catalog for trick or treat. How's that? Of course, you can just go on the website, make it easier. Keep it out of your recycling bin. And Lorna is new too. Well, welcome, Lorna. And Chris from Tulsa. Oh God, great. We got some great first timers here. And yes, JD, I have fished in Maryland before. I fished the Savage, and I've fished the what's the one that flows close to Baltimore? The Gunpowder. And I've fished the North Branch of the Potomac too in Maryland before. Savage is a great stream. All right, I think we have a pretty good crowd here, so I'm going to start. Now this is a relatively easy fly, although it's typically tied small. Don't be afraid of small flies. They seem intimidating at first, but as long as you have good light and good glasses or a magnifier, small flies are usually fairly simply dressed, so there's not a lot of steps. And the other key, I think, to tying small flies like this is to use 12-0 thread. You will have far fewer problems crowding the eye, getting thread in the eye and everything. And 12-0 is plenty strong for little tiny flies. So anyway, I'm going to show you three variations of the Griffith's gnat. I'm going to tie two of them and then show you a third, which is pretty easy to do. But this is just a terrific fly. Anytime you think fish are taking small flies, if I think fish are taking something small, I will put this on before anything else. Just if I don't know what they're taking, but I suspect because of the rises are really kind of soft and subtle, and I don't see any bugs on the water, I will start with, an 18 or a 20 Griffith's gnat. And if the fish don't take that, or they splash at it and refuse it, then I'll usually go to like a 22 or a 24 Griffith's gnat. And only after the fish don't take Griffiths will I try something else when I think fish are eating small flies. So I am going to show you three different ways. Gregory, I see you have a question about reeling. I advise you to go to the Orvis Learning Center. There is a video I have there under Tom's tips on the Orvis Learning Center, all about setting up whether you should reel right or left-handed, rather than discuss it here. Parachute Adams 22. Yeah, Joe, that's a nasty fly to try to tie. I generally don't tie them that small. 20 is about as small as I go. But if you're doing 22s, you're doing good. Anyway, the Griffith's gnat, the original fly was developed by George Griffith in Michigan. George Griffith was one of the founders of Trout Unlimited, probably really the founder of Trout Unlimited. So he's a pretty important person in the world of fly fishing and trout fishing and conservation. And he developed this fly for clumps of adult midges. Often when you have little tiny midges hatching on the water, they will kind of clump up. There's so many of them that they'll often kind of bump into each other. And also when they're mating, when they come back to the water and mate, they will clump up on purpose. They will get together and mate on the water. And so rather than having to try to imitate a size 24 or 26 midge, often throwing this Griffith's gnat out there in an 18 or a 20 will imitate a clump of those midges. And it doesn't look like much. I'll show you what it looks like. That doesn't look like much, but it works. It really works when midges are on the water. It works quite well. And it also, I think fish sometimes take it for a small beetle because it looks like a little beetle. There's a lot of little tiny beetles that fall in the water, maybe some other small terrestrial. And honestly, even when fish are taking small mayflies, even though this doesn't look at all like a small mayfly or even a small caddisfly, I've had fish take it during a small mayfly caddisfly hatch. So it's a great go-to fly. This is a fly that should be in everybody's box. Everyone that fishes for trout, you should have some of these in your box, whether you want to tie them or buy them. They're quite easy to tie and they don't require any difficult materials. So it's a good one. It's good, and it's a good one for your first small dry fly. It's a great one to do. Brandon says he uses it during caddis hatches in the Catskills. Yep. Yeah, it works, and it kind of looks like a fluttering caddis, so it's pretty good choice for that. All right, so why don't we start tying this? I am going to tie this fly on a size 18 BigEye hook. Okay. I really love these BigEye hooks because they're a lot easier to thread than a standard dry fly hook. They're a ring eye or a straight eye, which I really like a lot. Get this thing straight in the vise. There we go. But you can see if I turn this, you can see how big that eye is in comparison to a standard dry fly hook. And yeah, it adds a tiny bit of additional wire to that, but God, it's really not it's really not anything that you need to worry about. So there is the BigEye hook in the vise, and I'm going to take my 12/0 thread, refocus that. There we go. And I'm just going to start my thread here. And I am going to wind this all the way back to the bend. You don't have to be too fussy about it, but all the way back to where the bend starts, and then just hang it there. Then I'm going to take a Grizzly Hackle, and
Tom,
in this
we
particular,
just have one question.
Yeah, sure, Julia.
Tim's asking if they can fish it as a wet fly, subsurface, or mid-column.
You can fish it, absolutely. Yeah. You can fish any dry fly as a wet if you want. And I recommend that for this fly you tie from a hackle cape, because it's difficult to get saddle hackles small enough for this fly. And so you're going to be coming down here into the smaller hackles. And I like this hackle on this fly relatively short. Typically the hackle on a dry fly is 1.5 to 2 times the gape or the gap of the hook, which is the distance between the shank and the point. That's right. So right in here is a hook gap or hook gape. I like this short. So I'm going to take, and what I do to measure my hackle, instead of using a hackle gauge, because this is actually going to be shorter than I want, is I actually take a hackle before I take it off the cape, and I flare it around there. And that looks about right, just a little bit longer. So I just flare it around the hook. And now I know I got the right size. You might have to go through a couple to get the right size. So I'm going to pluck that feather. And then I'm just going to pull the fuzz or the fluff from the bottom of it. Sometimes it's a little difficult. You have to use your fingernails sometimes on these little tiny hackles. You come up a little ways until you get out of the webby area. That looks good enough. I've got that little hackle on the stem. I'm going to remove a couple more fibers here off camera, because I can't see it that well when I got it in front of that lens. So I'm just taking a few more fibers off. Okay. And then I will attach this to the hook with the shiny side, with the dull side facing up, because I want the dull side forward on this. So the dull side is going to be facing up. The shiny side is going to be facing down. And I'm just going to take a few turns here, and I'm going to wind forward. This will make sure that when you start, and you want to leave a little bit of bare stem there, just a tiny bit of bare stem. And I am going to trim this. I can find it. Trim the rest of this stem off. Can't get into it with the camera here. Ugh. There we go. And then I'm going to come forward to, just shy of the eye. And then I'm going to take a peacock eyed tail. And this is important, I think, for this particular fly. that you have a whole tail, a whole peacock-eyed tail, not strung herl. You can buy what's called strung herl in a bag, but you want to use the really fine stuff, and you find the fine stuff with the narrow barbs or the narrow barbules way down at the bottom of the stem. So I'm going to grab 2 of these. I'm going to cut them, not pull them like that. So I've got 2 little herls. You can even get away with 1 on this fly. And then I'm going to cut them up near the tips because they're pretty weak at the tip. So I'm going to cut them so that I even them off. And then I am going to just bind those down. Oops, I missed one. I'll sneak it in there. There we go. And kind of hold them up. Bind them down. Go all the way back to the bend. And then leave your thread hanging there. Then you want to take those 2 herls. You could twist them together a little bit if you want, or just wind them. And you're going to push them up against that thread so the thread keeps them from jumping forward. Now, the tricky part here is you need to get around the point of the hook. So you have to be a little careful with these first few turns that you don't nick the herls. And then once you get clear of that point, then you can just keep pushing a little bit against that thread, and that thread will keep those in place. And then tie it off a little bit shy of the eye. Tie it off first. I like to tie it off first with like 2 or 3 turns, and then take a couple extra turns for security. Like so. Everybody with me so far? Who's tying along today? Ed usually ties along. Ed, are you tying along? And then I have
We
to
did
find
have
my
a
Hackle.
couple questions.
Okay, go ahead.
I know this answer is absolutely not, but would you ever use orange thread for this?
Yeah, why not? I'd use any color thread. Yeah. Orange
And
thread would be cool on this fly.
I know. I was thinking the same thing, especially today being Halloween.
Yeah.
And then Alex from NY is asking how, I think you answered this earlier on, but I think they just joined. Welcome, Alex. How small do you typically tie this fly?
I tie this as small as a 24, and I think I've actually tied them in a 26.
Great.
If you have Hackle that's small enough.
And that's it for now. It's looking good.
I try not to fish them that small because they're really hard to see on the water. But I have tied them that small, and I do have some in my box. I avoid using them if I can. Then I'm going to grab the tip of that Grizzly Hackle with my Hackle pliers, and I'm just going to spiral this Hackle through the body. Again, that first turn around that point. And you don't want to take too many turns. You just want to kind of evenly go through the body with this. And this just kind of imitates those buzzing legs and wings on the pair of midges or a bunch of midges. This will work for a single midge too. I don't know why it doesn't look like a midge, but it'll work, I think, as a single midge. And then tie that Grizzly Hackle off. Take like 3 turns, make sure they're nice and secure. And then bring your thread in carefully, and bring your scissors in carefully. Cut it off. Whip finish. Oh, I forgot my whip finish tool too. I forgot all my tools. Good thing my fly tank desk is right here. And you whip finish. And if you got any hackle fibers close to the eye, just trim off with your scissors, and then put a little drop of head cement on there. And that's a Griffith gnat. So that's out of focus too. There we go. So pretty straightforward fly. Not at all difficult to tie, even though it's small. And another thing that you could do with this Griffith gnat, because it's small and it's difficult to see on the water, although it shows up pretty well because it does, that grizzly hackle does stick out a little bit. Another thing you can do is just take a piece of bright orange or white or whatever color you want yarn, and before you tie the fly, the first step you would do is just tie in a little piece of yarn, a little yarn post. And so that's like a high vis Griffith gnat, and that'll show up quite a bit better on the water, and will give you a little bit of extra visibility. So that's one variation you can do. The other variation that I use sometimes for difficult fish is that I tie a double Griffiths, and that's what we're going to tie next. So this is a double Griffiths. Now, I didn't think I invented this fly. I swear that I saw it somewhere. I saw somebody else tying it, but I looked online today, and there's absolutely no history, at least online, of a double Griffith gnat. And again, I don't think I invented this, but anyway, I can't find any record of anybody else doing it this way. And this is just another way of maybe a little bit more realistically imitating a pair of midges that are clumped together. And it's quite a bit, it's a little bit more difficult to tie. I'll admit that. And for this one, I like yellow thread, but again, you can use any thread you want. And I'm going to start my thread and wind to the back, just like I did with that other one. Any questions so far, Julia?
Not since the ones, well, there was just kind of a couple comments. Fabian was asking, would it be better if the fibers were pointing the other way?
I don't know. Maybe. I always point them forward. I always tie the dull side forward. That's the way I've always seen it tied, but you could try it the other way. It doesn't really matter that much, I don't think. I don't think in this particular fly it matters whichever way the fibers go.
And a couple people are asking which hook size you're using. In the description, we had anywhere from a size 16 to 24.
Yeah, I am tying on a size 18.
Oh, size 18. Okay, great. And then Rube Dog 1 is asking if you what kind of floatant you like, either gel or powder. I think I know the answer to this, but on this
gel first, powder later.
Okay.
Gel first when I first put it on, or I really like the Orvis fly dip, which is a liquid. And then if you can't see it or it starts to sink, then you put the powder on it. Okay.
Oh, and one more. Mark's asking if you would use barbs off the bottom, or would you cut the barbs off the bottom? That's what they're asking.
You could.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
All right.
But this is kind of an imitation of a midge buzzing above the surface of the water. So as opposed to a midge kind of down in the film. But if this didn't work and you thought the fish were taking like a midge pupa down in the film, yeah, cutting hackle off the bottom might work pretty well. Okay. All set. No more questions. All right. We're a little worried about this fly tying session today because Julia took a hike this morning and a black cat crossed her path. So.
It's true. It really did happen. And it wasn't, I have 2 tuxedo cats, but this was an all black cat. It literally crossed in front of me. So here's hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my grizzly cape, and this time I'm gonna pick an even smaller hackle. So I'm going to come further down toward the bottom of the cape and flare it around here. Yeah, that looks good. A really, really short one. I'm going to pluck that off, and sometimes it's hard to pluck those little feathers. And strip the bottom of it. I'm doing that off camera because I already showed it to you. Tie it in, just like we did with the other one, leaving a little bare stem. And on this one, I don't go too far forward, just about to there, and cut the stem off. Now I'm going to take the smallest herl that I can find. So I'm going to go to the very, very bottom of this eyed tail. And I'm going to take 1 fiber this time, just 1. Because what I want this to look like are 2 size 22 or 24 Griffith gnats together. I'm going to cut the tip off that peacock herl, and I'm going to tie it in, not going too far forward. And then I'm going to wind this. Actually, I'm going to bring my thread back so I can, there we go. And I'm going to wind this just about on 1/4 of the shank. That's probably enough right there. Tie that off. Now, if you have a hackle long enough, and actually, I can actually reuse this peacock herl for my second piece. I'm going to cut that off, put that aside, and if you have a long enough grizzly hackle, you can use it for the front part too. And then I'm going to take like 2 or 3 turns through that peacock herl. And I think I'm just going to take 2 complete turns, maybe 2.5. Tie that off, about 3 turns. And I'm going to cut that hackle. And just leave it right there. Now, I'm going to come back to my peacock eye, and this time for the quill in the middle of the body, the best quills are just at the bottom of the eye. So what I'm going to do is come up to the bottom of the eye and cut a single one of these, like so. And then I'm going to strip the herl from this quill. Now you can do this. You could do this with a pencil eraser, or I just do it with my thumbnail. And if you just carefully scrape that with your thumbnail, You don't need very much. You don't need to do the whole thing. And then I find if I turn it over, I can get whatever I didn't get on the first time around. And so I'm just using my thumbnail to remove that herl. I'm going to take a look at it closely here off camera to make sure that I got all the herls off there. Okay, we're ready. So now I am going to tie it in right where the strip part starts. And I'm going to wind forward to about, a quarter way behind the eye. Cut that off. Cut the herl part off. And then you may want to just go back over that to make sure to give yourself a smooth underbody like so. And then you get probably best way to do this is to take your hackle pliers to wind this. So I'm going to grab the end of that herl, and you need to be careful with peacock herl. Don't put a lot of pressure on it. And just wind. You could actually let the thread show through if you want. Whoops. Came out of my hackle pliers. Grab it a little bit further up. And just basically use the weight of the hackle pliers themselves to do this. Don't yank on a peacock herl because it's pretty delicate stuff. Looks like my quill twisted. And you just have to kind of be gentle with this. And then you tie that off like so. It's a good idea either at the end of this or right now to put a little drop of head cement on that quill, because a peacock herl isn't terribly strong. Now you might want to use a it's not in focus. Let's see if we can get that body in focus. There we go. You might want to use a synthetic quill or something. You could even use thread for this central band. That wouldn't be out of line. Now I think that hackle was long enough. I'm going to try to use the same hackle, the tip that I cut off. Hopefully I can get away with it. Otherwise I got to go in there and use another expensive hackle. And I'm going to tie this one in. Tie the stem in, leave a little bare stem there. And then grab that piece of peacock herl that I used for the back end and tie that in. Go back to where the quill starts. Leave your thread there. And then just wind a little tiny body there. Tie it off. And hopefully I get enough. I know I can get enough turns of hackle in here if it doesn't slip out of the hackle pliers. And then again, just a couple turns of the Grizzly hackle. stuff. And maybe use your fingers to pull that stuff back. A couple more turns for security. Whip finish. And there's your double Griffith. So you've got two tiny midges on a nice, I wouldn't call it a nice big hook, but it's a bigger hook than you would if you were fishing a size 22 midge. That didn't focus. Yep. So there's your double Griffiths. And you know, there are times when it works better than a single one. And again, I don't know who developed this pattern. I'm not going to take credit for it. I may have. I don't know. So anyway, can give it a little rotate here. That's what it looks like. Looks like I have something sticking in the eye. And if you do have something sticking in the eye and you feel brave, you can take your cauterizing tool. Let's see if I can do this. Oh, I see I got something sticking in the eye there. You can see I got a little bit of a stuff there. And rather than trying to get in there with my scissors, which is difficult, if I brace my hand and I hit it with that cauterizing tool very carefully, I can clean up that eye. So there we go. That's it. The double Griffiths. And again, you could probably use a thread body here and make it a lot easier on yourself. But I like the peacock herl. It looks good. I love peacock herl. I enjoy using it. So that's the bug. That's it. Griffith gnats. Yeah, there is a lot going on there for such a small fly, Roger. Tim would use glue, says Mark. All right. Any other questions about the Griffith gnat or the double Griffiths or the high vis Griffiths with the little yarn thing? Ed, you tied along and you tied the double. Good for you. Good for you. That's not an easy fly, especially in the smaller size. Could you put the one with the orange post up again? Sure, Mac. I can do that. Now this one is pretty common. You'll see this in fly shops. This one is not anything that I developed or anything unusual. So, oops, wrong camera. There's the one with the orange post. It's just a high vis yarn. You know, any kind of bright fluorescent yarn. When should I be looking to throw this fly? If you see midges buzzing on the water, and especially if they're clumping up, you know, if you see midges starting to get into clumps, which they often will, that's the time to use this fly. But again, as I said in the beginning, I would throw this fly anytime fish are eating small insects, caddisflies, mayflies, little terrestrials. You know, this probably looks quite a bit like a little tiny beetle from underneath. So It's one of those flies like an Adams that just works. Ed, you've tied along on every session. I am really proud of you. I am really proud of you, Ed. Trying to keep up with me. Oh, good for you, Ed. All right. So, any other questions about this fly before we turn you loose to go trick or treating? I know you're all dying to get out there and go trick or treating, so I don't want to keep you any longer than I have to. I use the double black gnat a lot under bushes. Ah, interesting, Peter. Yeah, interesting. Very good. I'm not dressing up, Roop Dog. I'm not very good at costumes. I don't think my 17-year-old is going trick-or-treating, so I don't have to go. So I'm just going to sit home and drink a little wine and have dinner and relax. Because, these tying sessions take a lot out of me. I need to decompress after all the stress of hanging out with you people for an hour. No, actually, I love doing these, and you guys are great. Roger's tossed between going as Tom or Tim. Well, Tim's scarier than I am, isn't he? I think so. With that ponytail, he's kind of scary. Is this to be skittered across the top occasionally? You could try it, Chris. Yeah, sometimes fish, when they're eating adult midges, want a fly that's skating across the top. So that's a good point. And I would grease my leader right up to the fly if you're going to skitter it. I would put some gel fly floating or gel fly paste or something, just something to make that leader float. Any kind of grease will make a leader float. And yeah, you can absolutely skitter it at times. Yep, that's a really good point, and I'm glad you brought that up. I do fish it a lot dead drift, but a little twitch here and there will sometimes help. So that's a really good point. Okay, everyone. I don't see any other burning questions. So happy Halloween. And are we tying next week, Julia?
I don't think we have anything on the calendar yet. So if you plan on it, that'd be great.
I think I'm in town, so yeah, I'll put something together for next Monday.
And then, do you want to tell people about the tie off in person?
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it a few times, but I know there's some new people here. I know a lot of you enjoy our monthly tie off between the great Tim Flagler and myself. I usually lose, but it's fun. We all have fun with it. And Tim and I are tying off live on the Saturday and
in
Sunday.
person live.
In person, yeah,
not
in person,
just Facebook,
not online, but
yeah.
In person at the International Fly Tying Symposium in Somerset, New Jersey. I think it's like 2 weeks from this past weekend. So if you're planning on attending that, come and heckle us because we want lots of hecklers. It'll be fun. Mark wants a steelhead fly. Yeah, I've got a note that I should be tying a steelhead fly. Let me come up. Let me see if I can maybe come up with something. Could you use the post in the doubles middle section? I suppose so, Lorna. Yeah, it'd be tough to make that skinny. It would be tough to make that skinny midsection in the double thing because the post is gonna add some bulk. But yeah, you could try it that way and just maybe do thread instead of doing a quill body. Quill body would be tough with a post in the middle, but yeah, you could try that. Absolutely. Yeah, experiment with it. See what you come up with. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for your great questions. We really appreciate you coming in and watching. And we'll see you next week with a fly as yet undetermined. Thanks.